Sorry about this. One sec. Almost there. Right. It's virtually my last slide, this one anyway. Okay, here we go. So we can just see here, just an example. We've got the colonnaded shops along here. We've got these lovely places up here which can be both living or working. So people are living in the city. Dedicated bike paths, as we've even shown over here, some light rail potential, which can talk about the street trees, making a dedicated cycleway through here, just to show what's possible. So just to summarise, I think what I'm saying is that we need to concentrate on building in these urban nodes or precincts, whatever you want to call it, or perhaps even key streets as well, and concentrate on rebuilding efforts on there rather than trying to disperse over the whole city, because sadly our place is going to be reasonably depopulated for a while. There's a lot of businesses have moved out and closed down, so for a number of years I think we're not going to have a lot of people living in the city, so I think we need to concentrate our efforts in circumscribed areas. Then between them, I think we need to transform the areas into green areas. I mean, there's a mini example that happened after September in the old ESCO site, as people will be aware, which I think was a marvellous little initiative. So some of this could be temporary, and maybe some of it could even become permanent. But it's places, as I said there, parks, walkways, cycleways, perhaps these reclaimed waterways, places for rest, places for recreation. And of course, build better. So we need to have one suggestion. It won't work everywhere in Christchurch, these colonnades, but perhaps there are some areas where it would be appropriate to have a colonnaded footpath set well back under buildings. They allow for a wider street, so we can have proper dedicated cycleways rather than just a painted line on the road as it is at the moment. Green strips, light rail, 3 to 5 level buildings for the foreseeable future. Encourage living back into the 4As, it's absolutely essential, through affordable housing and providing amenities to complement this. I think it's all very well saying we encourage people to live in the city, but you need the amenities to be part of it. You need a place to go down, buy your groceries, an inner city supermarket, green areas, parks where you can go and play and sit, perhaps schools, perhaps we need a few more schools in there, all sorts of things like that, to make it a friendly place for people to want to live. Listen to the voice of the community, which is happening at the moment, so it's brilliant. And encourage sustainable, high-quality design and architecture. Goes without saying. So make Christchurch a vibrant, exciting new 21st century city that we can all be proud of. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jasper. All right, we'll do some very rapid-fire questions. I've only got about 3 or 4 minutes for this, so first and first serve for Jasper. We'll go straight up. Yep. Go up to the middle there, Jenny. Turn right.
Thanks, Jasper. That was good. I enjoyed that. With reference to those blocks that are built with the internal courtyard, like we saw in your aerial photo of Valencia and Barcelona, and in your press sketch, you had an open courtyard in the middle as well of a city block. The question that puzzles me is why in the architect's sketch in the press that the frontages still look out over the road instead of looking out over the public square. And I was wondering if there's some reason why our frontages always look out over the cars and buses rather than looking out over the internal square, the hole in the middle of the block.
Right. Well, I would like to think that we can look both ways, to be honest. I think we need to look out onto the street, because if we don't look out on the street, we lose the life of the street. We don't want blank walls on the public edge. We want windows and balconies or whatever, so that you see activity, but we also want to look into the internal courtyards. So I think it's both. rather than either or.
All right, further up the top, yes.
I have two bikes, so I like cycling, but also like my car. In terms of the designs you've put up there, how do you see the parking issue being dealt with in the similar creative way, rather than in, just bulk? There must be a solution that integrates places for cars spread out throughout the city that are far closer to where people want to go, because the reality is we're all going to use our cars to go and do the things we want to do.
Absolutely.
And so none of the designs I saw had parking spaces integrated into these areas that you're talking about.
No, parking is fundamental. There's no point driving into the city if you can't leave your car somewhere, of course. So I think it's a combination of all sorts of things. I think it's sensibly placed car parking buildings, scattered strategic locations around the city. It's also, I think, if we did this colonnaded idea, we would have a wider street because we'd be pushing the footpath out. So we'd have a chance for dedicated cycleway, greenway, some parking, and for vehicles still to go past. So we haven't drawn an actual drawing showing that, but I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be possible.
Thank you, Jasper, for the visionary talk. I'm just here.
It's blinded by this light.
One question. Timber seems to be the building material for the future of Christchurch because it's very sustainable. But how can we make sure that it is truly sustainable if the building code prescribes heavily treated timber which is treated with arsenic and all sorts of poisons?
It's a good question. I think what's interesting is, I don't know if you're aware, there's a very creative and innovative timber structural system being developed by Canterbury University, which is essentially radiata pine laminated together to form beams and columns. That timber, I believe, is untreated. You can't use it outside, but it can certainly be used as the structure for the building. So I think there are ways around it. The issue with laminating it together, though, is that there is still a question mark over the glue used to hold it together, and I don't know if we have an answer for that. But it's a big question. I can't answer in a few minutes.
Right. The question I'd like to put to you is our cathedral tower, as it is now, it hasn't been completely demolished. As a permanent memorial, I think it would be nice if they encased it in protective glass, had an internal flame going in there with all the names of the people who have died. Also, a photo of the cathedral before and after the earthquake. I think they did something like this in Dresden. I don't think we should forget the way our city looked. You have a natural memorial there now,
Yes.
and it's the heart of the city, and I'm sure most Christchurch people would be acceptable to that idea.
Absolutely, we need to remember the event and we need to think of creative ways of doing it. Whether that's one, we need to work through, but I think the cathedral is probably one of the prominent sites where we can do a memorial of some sort, how we do it.
All right, a couple of quick ones. Yes, ma'am.
Everyone understands that you build your house on a strong foundation, and I believe because Christchurch was a swamp, we have little streams underneath, and I think it's very important that where we rebuild, there aren't beds that have been hidden by other things. And the other thing is that nature is not always straight lines, so I hope with the new form of laminating wood together we can have some curves in our buildings and it's not all just square.
No, certainly we can do. I think the idea of the consistent height and perhaps a colonnade means we've got, because I think you need a combination in a city of some unity, something that ties the whole thing together, but within that we can have the variety as I tried to show, so it might be a place where we can have curves and whatever. So yeah, I don't see any reason why not. Sorry, the first part of your question again is? Oh, foundations, that's right. Yeah, it is possible to build foundations. I mean, I'm not a geotech or an engineer, but speaking to them, there's a couple of ways. Firstly, you have to pile down through the liquefiable area to get to solid bearing. That can be quite expensive. Other way is perhaps using a raft foundation that just essentially floats if the ground liquefies beneath and the buildings themselves are kept secure. Maybe if we're doing a whole city block, we do one great big gravel raft foundation and you build the buildings on this rather than individual foundations. I don't know. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that still need to be worked through, to be honest.
Next question. Yes.
I was interested in a point that you made that in respect to height as opposed to floor level, which I think probably today I've realised is more important than floor level, considering that a building can go through with a floor level that says 9 floors, but in actual fact be 18 floors high. I'm a little bit concerned on something that I read in the paper yesterday where resource consent, I think it was a commercial property manager said resource consent has already been issued for several 9-storey buildings, and I'm assuming this has happened since September. One of them being the Old Munns building in Worcester Street. And I'm wondering how optimistic you are that we are going to be able to have the overwhelming theme that's coming from the website and from today is that we don't want to see more than a height of 3 to 4 buildings. So how optimistic are you that we are going to achieve what we want to?
The issue of high-rise is quite complicated, I think, to be honest. I think one of the things I would say is that I doubt whether there'll be a demand for it. So there might have been after September, people might have still felt comfortable proposing high-rises. I suspect after February we might find the market would say there was no point building high-rises because there's no one who's going to want to go in them. But on another level, high-rises actually, I think memories will fade, in my personal opinion, over the years, and heights will creep up in parts of the city, and there might even be a case that there are some higher buildings in key locations within the city. And I think we'd have to be very careful about where they are, that they don't block view lines and they are in a logical place. But interestingly, high-rises are actually, contrary to perhaps popular opinion, but you talk to some engineers and they'll tell you that high-rises, modern contemporary designed high-rises are actually quite good in earthquakes because they wave around like a tree. And they can absorb the energy of the earthquake if designed well, whereas low-rise is actually quite hard to get rid of the energy within them. So, but I mean that's we can talk for hours about pros and cons of high-rises.
Yep.
Jasper, when I came here as a student, probably nearly more years than I want to remember, having been an ex-Hawke's Bay girl, I got a shock to discover all these brick buildings. I guess now I understand why. The question I have, without being disrespectful to my English forebears, who are mine as well, I don't see a lot of Maori or Pacific or our immigrant characteristics apart from European, which I love in the designs, coming through in the ideas that have been promoted. We are a bicultural nation, and I'm sorry, we might not have a high population of Maori here, but they were well and truly here before we were.
Oh, it's absolutely no intention to exclude tangata whenua and anything of what I've presented. In fact, this idea of having what I think is important is have a sense that we can still have a sense of individuality within an overall framework, and absolutely no reason why the Maoris aren't part of that, of course.
All right, on that note, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sure Jasper will happily do some one-on-ones with you to the side of the stage. Let's hear it for Jasper van der Lingen.